Now, we are joined by the Athletics' Jon Machota here on 105 through the Fan. Morning, John.
Morning, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, John, anytime I get a chance to talk to you, I just got to lead off with this. When you look at the supporting cast that this Cowboys team has this year, have you stopped to consider, how different would this team be if they had 9 back there at quarterback?
It's an inside joke you guys are doing here.
Man, that's a good one, Bobby. I don't think it would be much different than it is right now. I think they're in a really good spot at the quarterback position. But no, I appreciate the joke. I didn't know where you were going with that at first, but then knowing you.
So were you part of the I hate Dak, I'm a full Romo fan? Is that what you're saying?
It's just I routinely would comment on his tweets for about 5 years. Just every time he'd say anything about the team and just say, yeah, but could you imagine if 9 God had this? Could you imagine?
To your defense, though, Bobby, it's not like I don't still see that from a lot of people.
Sure.
So it is. That's why real. I find it humorous, because it's Romo was a really good player. There's no question about it. But health-wise, it was going to be hard to even put him back out on the field without him getting hurt. But there's still people that will claim that if you put him back out on the field in 16, then they just march on and win the Super Bowl that year. So I don't know.
So you still get a lot of Romo texts then, or tweets, still to this day?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, there's still people that believe that Romo was done wrong. He should have got the job back, and if he would have, that would have been the year that they made that deep playoff run and finally got back to the Super Bowl.
Sure, because they made other deep playoff runs.
Right, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's a question for you, John, coming out of this game. Whether it be Romo or Dak or anybody else, are we going to run into a situation again where this team essentially goes 2.5 quarters without throwing the ball to their best player, CeeDee Lamb?
I don't think we will. It is kind of fascinating because you see other teams where they will just – and there's been times this year where they just keep going to CeeDee, and that makes the most sense. I mean, I don't think that they're – other than Tyreek Hill, maybe Justin Jefferson, there's not been a better receiver in the NFL this year. There's a part of me, though, that wonders if it's just Dak as a person, Dak as a teammate, that he always wants to try and get everybody involved. You see some of those videos of him mic'd up and stuff, and the way he just talks to the team in the huddle and things like that. I really do feel like it's not in his DNA to just keep going to the same guy over and over again. But there's going to be games where that has to happen, and I do think things might have been different in Miami had that have happened in the second and third quarter. So there were times where that didn't happen in San Francisco. Obviously, CeeDee voiced his displeasure, and we saw changes. The offense that did change, and CeeDee was a target more than he was certainly before that, and so. Maybe that's what happens off of this game. Maybe this is kind of an eye-opener that, hey, in certain situations we have to just force the ball to 88. Now, I will say that there are some plays when you look back at that game from Sunday, and Dak just doesn't have that protection up front. I don't feel like he had his full trust all the time.
Because I don't know if you saw the Minnesota Detroit game, but they were Nick Mullins was forcing it to Justin Jefferson in that game. And that's to the point of reckless, though. You don't want that. But so did they conclude in the tape that, he was open on a number of plays and that's all it was just protection?
I mean, they're not saying that because they're not going to throw anybody under the bus. But, I mean, watching the game, that's the way I felt like it was. But even in that, with that being said, there has to be plays where, hey, it's just drawn up. We're just going to 88 here. That's going to be where we go. That's the first read. We're throwing there. If it's not there, throw the ball away. When you need to get something going, especially down there when they're pinned back, 2 different times, I really think they need to just get the ball to CeeDee and try and have him make something happen quick, because obviously the offensive line wasn't holding up on one particular side. And so, yeah, I think it needs to happen. But also with the Nick Mullins thing, I mean, that's a quarterback that's obviously not very good, and so he's just going to throw it up to the guy who's arguably the best receiver in the league and hope that good things happen. And a lot of times it did, but Dak's just too good for that. I mean, because it's not just the CeeDee thing. We didn't see Jake Ferguson as involved as we have in the past either. So it's more than just the CeeDee part.
Talking with Jon Machota from The Athletic here on 105 through the Fan. John, when we talk about the protection issues, obviously the big question this week is going to be about Tyron Smith's availability. Mike McCarthy's always going to give us the same line on Monday, Wednesday, whatever it is, of, well, he's got a chance to play. He's got a shot. And that's kind of just the standard line that we get. Do you think there's legitimate optimism about Tyron Smith being available and ready to go for this Detroit game?
I do. And Now, this is only walking. This isn't blocking anybody or having to use your back. But I can tell you, I mean, seeing him yesterday in the locker room, he was moving a lot better than he was a week ago. And Jerry mentioned at your guys' station about the getting probably was a cortisone shot, I would think. He said injection. Maybe that helped. But I think that there's a really good chance that Tyron is back for this game.
When you have the issues that you had with Edoga, which are really confusing because a lot of it just seemed like missed assignments. And he's been practicing a lot with the first team this year with Tyron getting a number of rest days. Do you think there's anything within their mind or within their thought process that says, hey, if Tyron Smith is down, if we lose him during the playoffs, we can't go back out there with Edoga again? This has got to be a conversation about Tyler Smith bouncing out to tackle and TJ Bass playing inside.
No question about it. When it's win or go home, and you don't know that, yes, this is 3 years in a row that you've made the playoffs, but you don't know that you're going to make it next year. You don't know that you'll make it anytime in the next 5 years. So when you have the chances they have, I just think that that's the no-brainer thing that you have to do. Is it ideal? Of course not. You'd love to keep Tyler Smith at left guard. But if it's, playoffs and Tyron Smith's not coming back, I think you have – I don't think there's any question about it. I was talking with some reporters the other day about what if Terrence Steele was to go down, what do you do? And I'm like, if it's a win or go home game, you put TJ Bass at right guard and you kick Zach Martin out to right tackle. I know that's not his ideal position. He doesn't want to play it, but that's just what you have to do. If it's win or go home, you got to make different changes than you would do in week 14, week 13, whatever.
Jon Machota, The Athletic, cover the Cowboys here on 105 through the Fan. All right, so they got Detroit here this weekend, home game, and then they go to Washington, but that's not really a statement game on the road. Did they miss their chance for sort of that statement victory, or does beating a Lions team, a good one, at home, give them that same sort of boost?
I don't think it gives them the same one at all. Psychologically, there's just no way. They've just been too good at home to where they would feel like, oh, that's the same thing. And they're just comfortable at home. I mean, they've been, these last 2 seasons, the best team in the NFL at home. So I don't think that even beating a good Lions team does that for them. But I do think that the way they played against Miami has a little bit of that feel of the way they played in Philadelphia, where it's a loss, but then after that, there was a little bit of a confidence built there, and then they went on to win, I think, 5 games after that. I do see some of that from the Miami game, that if they were to go on the road in the playoffs and won multiple playoff games on the road against a good opponent, I do think that they would look back at that Miami game and go, hey, I think that was a big help there. But I also think to a certain extent, there is a little bit of that with Washington as well, just because of the fact that they played so poorly at the end of the season last year at Washington that I think if they just go out there and have a good showing there, I think that'll be a little bit of a confidence boost too, but nothing like if they would have beat Miami or played better at Buffalo.
You talk about that, it's reminiscent of the Philly game, and it was in several ways in terms of it felt like, and this has been my criticism of them this year, is that in close games, it feels like they're always losing on details. It's always small things. It's little nuances that's where they are really separated from some of the other big contenders. Is any of that fluky, do you think? Or is it just this team has some issues playing in tight ball games and really being on top of things?
I just got to be honest with this. I think Brian Broaddus has the best take on this that I've heard so far, and it's a better take than I've heard from anybody in the locker room. And maybe just because they don't want to say it, but I do think it is the communication. I do think that it is pre-snap stuff, and the reason why I think it is that is just because of when I wrote a story a couple weeks ago about the Dak Here We Go, and just hearing the reaction from that, including from a member of the coaching staff, talking about how much they worked on that in the offseason because communication was such a big thing, spending hours on trying to come up with Here We Go. I don't think they're doing that just for fun because then they're like, hey, this will be cool. This will catch on, like, Peyton Manning yelling Omaha. No, they did that because there were significant issues there that they did not like, and I think we see those crop up on the road because of the fact that you have to go silent count. You have to do things that are more, during the week. Hey, when we get in the situation, you have to do that as opposed to being able to check and everything's a lot cleaner when you're at home. The crowd's quiet when you have the ball. I think that is the number one reason why they've had the issues on the road is the communication issues at the line of scrimmage offensively.
Is there any hope that 2 weeks remaining in the season, you're going to be able to iron those things out before you're likely going on a road run for the playoffs?
If they have their best 5 starting offensive line, I believe so, yeah. I will say, it's not just Tyron Smith. It's anybody on that starting 5 offensive line. If they have to play a backup there, I don't like their chances really to win any of their playoff games. If they have that best 5 back out there, I think that because of their continuity, how much they've played together, I think a lot of that stuff can get ironed out. I know they did have that in Buffalo, but I just thought the Buffalo game was just completely out of control right from the beginning, and you just never thought they were going to, have a chance in that game. But I don't see it being that way in the playoffs, and so if they have that best 5 offensive line, I think they'll be fine with it.
They don't believe in best 5, right? And that we always heard they don't believe in best 5, but I agree with you. I would just get them healthy.
Fantasy football nonsense, I think we call that.
That's right.
But hey, real quick on that. They put out that video of their conversations in the draft room when it came down to Bergeron and Mozzie Smith. Yeah. So they showed you that. Yeah, they showed you how much they needed another offensive lineman. They knew it was on their radar as well, and I imagine they'll be having that same exact conversation in this draft coming up.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Have a great week, and maybe I'll see you at the game. Who knows?
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Hey, John, be sure when you do Talking Cowboys here in a sec, just work in a reference to 9 for me, please.
Okay, I will.
Thank you. Love you.
Jon Machota, The Athletic, join us here on 105.3 The Fan.